Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to America's civilian disarmament pandemic. My name is William Kirk. Channel is Washington Gun Law. Going to just kind of BS here for a few minutes and let everyone trickle in. By the way, if you're joining us live, thank you very much. And drop a little comment down in there and tell us where you're checking in from. We'll always love to find out where you guys are all checking in from. We're going to be talking about a bunch of states tonight, a bunch of states, probably 40-something gun bills covering at least a dozen-something states tonight. And I get that there's some people that might be in Tennessee and it's like, oh, you ought to see the crazy gun bill that they're introducing out here. I get it. It's crazy. But the chance of it passing in Tennessee is somewhere between like slim and none. And so we're not really focusing on that. We're going to be focusing tonight instead really about all of the bills that have made it out of committee. In some instances, they've already been voted off the House of Origin floor, which means they're now over to the other chambers. So these are bills that are really picking up steam. Okay, now, a couple things. First of all, we will be live again bright and early the morning of February 23rd. We will have a conference on February 20th. This close to getting Costas Moros to join us for that WGL AM. That would be 6:30 on the West Coast, 9:30 on the East Coast. And there's a big potential there because right now we do have 2 assault weapon ban cases on that Friday conference, but we could end up with the Duncan case, the Viramontes case, and the Gators Guns case. So we could end up with 5 really big Second Amendment issues, all dealing with either assault weapon bans or magazine bans, all being conferenced on Friday. So that is why that Monday morning conference could potentially be a big deal. Could be a big fat nothing burger also. So we'll see about that. Okay, now, for those of you who geek out at Washington Gun Law all the time, number one, thank you very much. I really appreciate all the support that you've given this channel over the last 4.5 years we've been doing this. Secondly, you will know that oftentimes we do cover very infuriating gun control legislation from all corners of the country. And so we have what we call triple B videos. And I will tell you that if you reside in any one of the states that I'm going to be talking about tonight, this will be a triple B video. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, you're going to need one of the following to get through what we're about to talk about tonight. Okay, you're going to need some bourbon. That's one way to do it. 3 fingers is a good start. Okay, now if that's not your style, then you can always go with breathing exercises. Okay, because that can seriously help with emotional regulation. And again, some of this is going to be infuriating. Or the final thing is, of course, you can go with a barf bag. You can go with a barf bag tonight because some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about will make you sick. Now, before we get into all of the states that we're going to be talking about, I want to tell you about a strategy that I have seen evolve in a very short period of time. Okay, and that is the civilian disarmament strategy that I am seeing now in these states, many of which are playing what I like to call this game of catch up, right? They're trying to catch up with the states that have significantly disarmed their citizens. Now, the old method used to be kind of the death by 1,000 paper cuts, all right? And you saw this in California. If you talk to Californians, it was 2 decades worth of just chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. And eventually you wake up one day and it's like, I don't have any gun rights anymore. But you see some of the other states that have trying to do it more recently. Some of the new Johnny come lately, if you would, Washington, Oregon, New Mexico, Colorado, and this year's new entrants, Virginia. And what they are really doing, and this will date myself because I'm in my 50s now, but some of you might remember the game of Missile Command. And when you get into the upper levels of Missile Command, you're just going to have to, a couple of your cities are getting sacrificed. You just got to save a couple. And that's what's happening now in these state legislatures is they are throwing so many bills through the legislature simultaneously that even the most concerted effort is not going to pick all of them off. So that's a big problem. With that, what we're going to do is I'm going to go through just a bunch of bills. And now listen, every bill I'm going through tonight, I've linked up. So if you got a question, you can put it in the comment section, but I'm trying to run the board here too, so it's going to be a little tricky. Or you can actually just click on the link and read the bill for yourself. And then if you got some questions, you can always send it back to Washington Gun Law. All right. And again, the other thing I want to tell you about these bills, this is not, with the exception of the very last bill I'm going to talk about, every other bill here is absolutely gained significant traction. So all of these bills are a legit chance of becoming law. All right, here we go. We're going to start in the state of Virginia because nobody right now has it any worse than the good folks in Virginia. If you don't believe me, this just gives you, this is actually not every single bill. I couldn't fit them all on the slide. I got tired of adding to them. But this just gives you an idea of some of the House and Senate bills that they're dealing with that all deal with gun control legislation. And for all of you checking in Virginia, one, thank you very much. Number two, welcome to the gates of hell. Okay, because I know this, you guys are going 0 to 60. The thing Virginia's got to realize is a lot of these gun bills were passed, I believe, a year ago, but you had a different governor who just vetoed all of them, and you didn't have the votes to override the veto. But this year, math's a little different, isn't it now? Okay, we're going to start with Senate Bill 749, and then there's a House companion bill also of House Bill 217. This is a ban of assault firearms, okay? This is a terminology that the state of Virginia is calling them. Some states call them assault weapons. One state's going to call them extremely dangerous firearms. These are what a lot of people think are the AR and AK platforms. Yes, they are, both in rifle and pistol. But take a look at the legislation, because there will also be some handguns and some semi-automatic shotguns that will also be banned if this becomes legislation. And in Virginia, if you're out there and you're listening, if you're watching on replay, listen to me very carefully here, okay? Stock up now. Stock up right now. If you have been thinking about dipping your toes into this platform, or you've always wanted to get that thing, or whatever it is, this is the time to do it, okay? This is the time to do it. Currently, these bills, which have an enactment date, I think I got it on one of these slides right here. If I don't, it's July 1st. It's July 1st of this year, okay? So you got to get on it, all right? Now, what this does is very similar to what we did out here in Washington State a few years ago. This is the ban of the commercial sale of these, all right? So any type of sale, offer for sale, manufacture, or transfer would be prohibited by law. But anything you owned prior to the enactment of law would actually be yours to keep for now until they, decide to amend the statute someday. Because all they got to do is add the word possess in there, and we're in a whole different ball game here. Now, there's also been a lot of discussion about the magazine ban. I think the Senate bill had it at 15 rounds. The House bill had it at 10 rounds. I'm not really sure which one of these two bills is ultimately going to make it. One of them, I believe, is going to make it to your governor's desk. But the grandfathering clause that was originally in the bill was then taken out of the bill, as you know, in a committee. But fortunately, that has gone back into the bill. So that also means magazines, okay? And this is what I did in Washington State. I want you to think about this, Virginia. I actually bought magazines for firearms that I didn't own yet. I purchased the firearms after the magazine ban went into effect, and the FFL was like, sorry, I can't give you the magazines. And my answer was, no big deal. So think about that as well, okay? Because this is a significant reality. And unfortunately, this is only one of several gun bills we're going to be talking about in your state. So that, once again, Senate Bill 749, House Bill 217. I think they're both passed out of their house of origin already. So this is real, Virginia. This is real. So stock up now. All right. House Bill 21, and I believe, yes, Senate Bill 27 also does the same thing. And this was done in California years ago. It was done in Washington a couple years ago. They're trying to do it in Colorado. They're trying to do it in New Mexico. So welcome to the club again, Virginia. Now, this is what this does. And Virginia, this is what I need you to be really aware of. This creates all sorts of new licensing, security requirements. In some instances, it actually requires the FFLs to completely change the infrastructure of their building. Okay, and of course, all of that costs a lot of money. Requires mandatory video recording and then storage for long periods of time. So you've got to actually buy all the equipment and the infrastructure to do that. So now you've added a whole bunch of cost to the operation of gun stores. At the same time, you remove their ability to sell semi-automatic rifles and magazines, which hold more than 10 rounds or 15, whatever it turns out to be in your state. And so you have now taken away from the gun store two items that, candidly, if gun stores are honest with you about, especially in the magazine area, there's a pretty decent little markup. Most gun stores operate on margins that thin, and you need to understand that. So when you take, it's like a grocery store, you take aisles 11 through 15 and tell them they can't sell it anymore, but all the overhead is the same or even more expensive than it once was. This is how you drive the FFL industry completely out of your state. And Virginia, listen to this. if you're going to go stock up, I get it. You're going to save a buck here or there by going to a Cabela's or Bass Shop, whatever the big box store is out there in Virginia. But you see, those stores are going to survive this crap no matter what. They're going to survive. All right. They're big, huge corporations. You know, if you got a store in Virginia that's losing money, you got another 2 stores in Arkansas that are printing it. So it doesn't matter. Okay. You've got to go to these small, independently owned and operated Virginia FFL, some which have probably been serving some rural communities for decades now, because those are the ones that are going to get smoked. And when you start losing your rural FFLs, your rural gun stores, you can literally start mapping out what I like to call Second Amendment deserts, where if you live in a certain part of the state, you're driving 50 miles each way to go see a gunsmith or go to a gun store or go buy ammunition. So you need to carefully guard your FFL industry. And this is part of the strategy. What's going on here in Virginia is they're going to get all the gun owners so worked up on everything, and I get it, that you're not going to be looking out for the FFL industry, and the FFL industry is not going to, and it's just complete attack and onslaught right now. So please be aware of that. Now, here's another big one, okay? Virginia, that's House Bill 40. Now, here's the thing with House Bill 40. This is what they will call a ghost gun ban, but we call here at Washington Gun Law unserialized firearms. Those are firearms obviously without a serial number, or untraceable firearms. Those are firearms that if you ran them through a metal detector might not set it off. Okay, that's what this is banning. In Washington State, the way we did that is the way we defined unserialized firearms. It was from a date certain going forward, and so you could always claim that it was manufactured before that date. And what you're doing here in Virginia is you don't have any real grandfathering provision, and there is a possession element in this statute with an enactment date of July 1st of this year. So if you own firearms that you have manufactured yourself from unfinished frames or receivers, 80% lowers, whatever you want to call them, all of which would have been done completely lawfully. Okay, so long as you were otherwise lawfully allowed to possess a firearm, that is lawful activity. But understand, Virginia, not only do these bills make the manufacturing of those moving forward unlawful, they make the possession of the firearms that you have without serial numbers, or those that you may have 3D printed or maybe made of materials that would be defined under the untraceable statute. They make all of those unlawful too. So on July 1st, you are suddenly in possession of a bunch of unlawful contraband. Now, we're going to carefully watch that bill, because if it becomes more and more to fruition, theoretically, there should be some serialization component in the statute that would allow you to alter the firearm and keep it. Whether or not you all are going to be willing to comply with that, that's going to be your decision to make. My job is to tell you where the lines are. You decide whether you're going to scribble inside or outside. So be aware that that is House Bill 40. And then there is also Senate Bill 323. And you can see these little squiggly lines. These are some slides I had left over from the thing I did with Cam Edwards. Great guy. Cam, if you're watching, thanks for everything. But anyways, we'd done a live thing about Virginia exclusively. And so those basically said, hey, at the time that I'd done that, which was a couple of weeks ago, these bills had all already been in committee, been voted out of committee. In some instances, they'd been in and out of 2 committees already. And they were all on the launching pad ready to get out of their house of origin. So be aware of that. Now, Senate Bill 115. It's an evil little piece of legislation, because Virginia, you have really nice concealed carry reciprocity right now. And what I mean by that is what states does Virginia honor concealed carry licensing from? And Virginia is actually one of the better states on that. If Senate Bill 115 becomes law, you guys are going to actually go from really good to really bad, just like that. And it really will become up to the discretion of your attorney general, which we could go on a whole diatribe about that altogether. So I want you to be aware of that, because what happens, and anywhere else around the country, I want you to be aware of this. When you start restricting, like, well, we used to honor it from 14 states, but now we're only going to honor it from 4 states. You have a tendency to have those 10 states on the other side get all pissed off, and now they no longer honor yours. And I get that we got 29 constitutional carry states in the country right now, fortunately, so that alleviates the issue for more than half the states. But depending on where you live in the country, and especially for folks out in Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, you guys are always crossing state lines. There's all sorts of cases about this stuff already kicking around the Supreme Court. So please be aware of that. The last bill that we're going to talk about from Virginia is Senate Bill 364. And when I say this is the last bill, Virginia, I don't mean this is the only thing you got to worry about. There's plenty more. It's just that I would spend all night on Virginia if we didn't get onto some other things here. But this creates the Virginia Center for Firearm Violence Intervention and Prevention. This is like the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Anytime you're seeing an Office of Gun Violence Prevention or whatever be formed by any government entity, what it really should be called is the Chamber of Civilian Disarmament, right? The Committee for Civilian Disarmament, because the only solution they ever will come up with for curbing gun violence is to strip lawful and responsible gun owners of their Second Amendment rights. So that's just the way it works, okay? All right, so that's Virginia. Now, Virginia, if you're watching, all of those bills are linked up, and I will add, actually, if you're watching on replay, I will also add the Virginia Citizens Defense League, because they got a fantastic little tracker on there that you can follow the bill. So I will link that up when the program is done. If you're watching live, it's not going to be down there right now. All right, now we're done with Virginia. Now we got to talk about New Mexico, and this has been really interesting for Washington gun law, because I built these connections with states through their own individual misery. The first state outside of Washington that I got to do this was Illinois. A state that I got to do this, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, because your governor sucks, is New Mexico. And this bill had kicked around, I believe, last year as well. But this year it seems to be coming much more towards reality, and that is Senate Bill 17. And this is, if you could take this model right here and put it all in one piece of legislation, that's what's going on with New Mexico Senate Bill 17. Okay, it really is. It's kind of the Death Star of gun bills, because it does a lot of things. All right, now I got my list here just so I make sure I don't do anything. All right. Just as I was talking about in Virginia, all new sorts of security measures for gun stores, right? So they're going to, you got to retrofit your building, you got to add cameras, you got to do this, you got to do that, all sorts of stuff, right? Sometimes it's exterior things, bars on the windows, you got to change your doors, all sorts of stuff. So that's one of the things it does. All right, then there are all new licensing and training requirements for all the gun stores in New Mexico, which of course adds what to it? That's right, cost, much more cost. And then of course with that comes all these extra reporting requirements. So they're adding manual labor to the operation. You see what they're doing. This is one that we're thinking about, a challenge out here in Washington State. It requires the gun stores to report all of the traces that were asked of them to the state. Now here's the funny thing. The state police could literally call ATF and be like, gun store number ABC here, but we want to know how many traces you ran in the last 24 months. And they get the data just like that. So they're literally, what they're doing is they are mandating private entity to turn over what is otherwise federal data to the state. Compulsory, because of course your licensing and everything like that is required on it. So that's all of the things that it does to the FFL. But of course, what everyone's got themselves worked up over is the prohibiting sale of extremely dangerous weapons, okay? Now, much like what we talked about in Virginia and New Mexico, this one also would prohibit the commercial sale, offer for sale, transfer, running a background check for it. Does not prohibit possession at the current time. But this has a July 1st, 2026 activation. Beginning July 1st, 2026, a dealer shall not sell or transfer any of the following firearms, ammunition, or devices, nor shall a dealer process a background check pursuant to New Mexico law for the transfer of any of the following firearms. And then it goes through gas-operated firearms. And for those of you who are familiar with the AR platform, you will understand this. For those of you who are not, you'll have to take our word for it. But there is essentially, I believe, 4 or 5 different technologies, all running on the same physical principle of using the pressure from expanded gas to run back toward the breech to then cycle the firearm so that it can cycle a new round. So that's how semi-automatic rifles work. And you have to have this gas chamber. It's got to go travel way back in distance. It's a little bit different than a handgun, and that's important. What they're trying to do, unlike in Virginia, where they're doing it the old-fashioned way with which is called external feature bans, and what external feature is that we're going to ban any semi-automatic centerfire rifle which accepts a detachable magazine and then has any one of the following features. And it lists all the features that you're always going to find on that platform. All right, so that's an external feature ban. New Mexico is doing it through an internal feature ban. It's banning the same thing, but just for different reasons, just by explaining what's happening inside the firearm versus what it looks like on the outside. That's the only difference. Now, New Mexico, and there's been a lot of people hitting a lot of panic buttons for good reasons, but sometimes they have a tendency to get a little bit overexcited about one thing, which is a lot of people believe that this is going to ban semi-automatic handguns. And if you read just one part of the bill and you take a look at the scientific principles and principles of physics which are described in there, you could come to that conclusion. Okay, this is what I want you to be aware of, New Mexico, is that in Section 7, it lists the exceptions, and the exception is a gas-operated semi-automatic firearm that accepts a detachable magazine, and then it also has a single-action or double-action handgun, which uses the force of recoil to cycle the firearm. So just be aware, it does not ban handguns. Yeah, I'm sure that there are plenty of state legislators that if they could do that, they would do it right now. And I'm not saying they're not going to try anyways, but that is Senate Bill 17. It is a big piece of legislation. It has a significant, I believe it's already passed out of the Senate already. I believe it's out of the House of Origin already. So this is, and you know your governor is going to sign it because she's been begging for this for a couple of years now. So what is advice to New Mexico? Same as my advice was to Virginia. Stock up right now. Okay. A state that I absolutely love, Colorado. If you've never been to Colorado, it's absolutely gorgeous. And they've been playing a little game of catch up. And Colorado has a different way of disarming people. And one of the first things we're going to talk about in Colorado is Senate Bill 4. And this is just right up Colorado's alley. So there are many, many ways to disarm people. The one way that seems to get the most attention is we just ban certain items. We just ain't gonna let you have these items. Okay, that's one way, and that's the one that gets everyone all spun up, and that's the one that if I do a video on, I'm gonna probably get the most views. It's just the reality of it. Okay, second way is we will just ban places that you can possess firearms. So you saw this when the Bruin opinion came down and that pesky little thing called the Constitution got in the way. You saw states like New York and California, Illinois, they passed these large swaths of new sensitive places or gun-free zones. So you can ban that. The third thing you can do is you can ban the categories of people that can actually possess firearms. And that's where red flag laws come in, because red flag laws allow you to then take away a person's Second Amendment rights with no real shred of due process under a much lower burden of proof than it is required to confine a person guilty of a crime. There's only two ways to expand your use of red flag laws, okay? And the two ways to do that is, number one, you can either lower the threshold of proof, but candidly, can't get much lower. The second thing you can do is you can expand the category of people who can ask for a red flag law. And that is where Colorado has always been carving its own path. Okay, they absolutely carved their own path doing that, because nobody gets more creative than Colorado when it comes to, hey, who else should we allow to petition for red flag laws? What Senate Bill 4 does is it expands it to educators, medical professionals, counselors, and all sorts of other employees and things like that. And that's not just your professionals. That's if they worked with your kids also in the last 6 months. And the thing that, as a criminal defense attorney, the one thing that I find most troubling about it is the area of counseling. Okay, because I have worked with a lot of clients when my practice was a lot more active back in the day that had significant chemical dependency, mental health, sometimes a combination of both, and they were in dire, dire need of counseling. And yeah, because they were involved in the criminal justice system, they may have engaged in activity leading up to that is, that's not nothing you want to brag about. But you need to have these discussions with counselors if you're truly trying to make a transformation as a human being. And now it puts counselors in a position where they may have to petition. It puts patients in a position where they may not want to say things to counselors. when we're chilling the counselors, the communication between patient and counselor, when we're chilling that, we're completely ruining the effectiveness of counseling. So it has this sick snowball effect when we start getting educators and in particular medical professionals involved. It has a horrible chilling effect on it. And they're going to start adding lawyers to it here pretty soon. Like, well, your rule of confidentiality, your ethics on confidentiality go out the window if you think the dude's a little crazy and might have a gun. I mean, because I've met a few people like that. Just not going to name names. All right. Now, the other thing, and this is going to be kind of a common theme that we get into later on in the day here with Colorado and other states, is House Bill 1144. This bans the 3D printing of many items, frames, receivers, in some cases, components and things like that. And in many instances, I will point out that oftentimes the manufacturing of these items, the manufacturing of unserialized receivers, untraceable frames, things such as that, have already been banned by previous law in the states that you're seeing this pop up. So a lot of this is like, well, I think it's already illegal. It just really what it's adding to it is that you can't make it through 3D printing, okay? So part of this bill is not a big deal. Here's the big deal. And again, this is not the only state I'm going to talk about this with. It also bans the possession of certain computer files. And in all of these instances, and I read all of these laws before I get ready and to make my notes here, in each instance, the possession of a file is presumed to be for nefarious purposes, because what it really is you can't possess a file with the intent for yourself to manufacture or for you to distribute the file to somebody else to manufacture. And then in every instance, the law says there shall be a presumption that if you possess the file, you're possessing it for those reasons. Now, you can rebut that presumption. It's a law that I don't really know how on God's green earth government's going to enforce unless somehow or another they're getting a search warrant and they're getting through your computer. Certainly, we wouldn't be, in support of any kind of a screening program or anything like that for computer files. And I will tell you that this is the big thing in America that you need to be aware of is that these files, these possession bans on computer files are code. And code in almost all instances has been determined to be speech, which would then be protected under the First Amendment. So we got this big lawsuit going on right now. I think it's called California versus Catalog. And it's basically a state of California suing a Florida company because they were hosting files that people could download that theoretically showed you how to build components of firearms and things like that. But you can also go to the library and take a look at the Anarchist Cookbook. So there's a lot of overlapping Second and First Amendment litigation that's going to happen over the next few years if we continue down this road of trying to ban the possession of certain types of computer files. And if we ever get really good at enforcing that, can we start with child pornography first? Can we rid society of those files first, and then we can worry about the other stuff? That's just side note from Washington Gun Law. So, all right, Oregon, you're next. Oregon and Washington Gun Law, we got to connect over ballot measure 114, which at the time, Oregon, I said, was absolutely the shittiest gun bill out there. And it was at the time. I know you've been lapped multiple times because these states keep getting more and more. But ballot measure 114 has been challenged both on the federal court, which did not go particularly well, but it was also challenged at the state court all the way to the state Supreme Court. And, again, we're reading the tea leaves on how the oral arguments went, the questions and stuff, but there's a probability, there's a possibility, a realistic possibility that the Oregon State Supreme Court could strike down ballot measure 114 under state constitutional grounds, Article 1, Section 27, I think it is there in the state of Oregon. So what House Bill 4145 does is it starts off with, we repeal ballot measure 114 and replace it with this. And that's literally what it does. Now, it does some other things, and we're going to talk about what it does, because there's a couple of, I'm not going to call them good things, but slight improvements over ballot measure 114. But I think that there's a bunch of Oregon state legislators who think, well, if we lose on, I think it's Arnold v. Kotek is the case down there. If Tony Aiello is watching, Tony Aiello Jr. was the attorney that argued that case. He rocked it, Tony. Hopefully you're watching. But if I think they're thinking like if all of a sudden the Oregon State Supreme Court strikes down ballot measure 114, they're going to be like, oh, but it doesn't exist. That case is moot because we got House Bill 4145. The problem is that the constitutional analysis that from the previous case, Arnold v. Kotek, and what they're doing here would be exactly the same. It would be exactly the same. So there would still be the same constitutional deficiencies. Okay, still has a permit to purchase, which a very, very evil law. I could go on that for 30 minutes myself. It pushes back the implementation date again, Oregon, because you got to remember when they passed ballot measure 114, they had no funding, they had no infrastructure, they had no clue what they were doing, right? So it pushes it back to January 1st, 2028 now. Has some things to do with magazines as far as providing for the exemptions and things such as that. It grants a 180-day grace period for people to dispose of magazines. What they're talking about is if the injunction were to be lifted, you're going to have 180 days to dispose of them in certain fashions, none of which involve transferring them inside the state, of course. And then it adds some other provisions, and this might be a good thing, Oregon, because the original ballot measure 114 said that if you're found in possession of a high-capacity magazine post-ban, it's presumed to be contraband, and there was a burden for you to establish otherwise, which I always said was absolutely an unconstitutional burden shifting, absolutely an unconstitutional burden shifting on a criminal case. What this does, it lists all of these criteria and other types of evidence that the state can use to establish that actually you possess the magazine post-ban, which would make it contraband at that point. But I'll be honest with you, it would have been virtually impossible for prove the case already with the new criteria. There's no effing way you could ever prove it. There's just no way. So whatever, this is what happened. So right now, what Oregon is struggling with this year is House Bill 4145. And again, that one's, like I said, it's been out of committee already. It's moving along. It has a very good chance. You know the governor's going to sign it. So away we go. All right. Here's a state that I've always said that if you want to know who has the most evil gun laws, it's the state of Illinois. And the problem for the folks out in Illinois is it's not just so much what their state legislature does to them, it's how they do it to them as well. And by the way, Illinois, we are coming out there in March. We'll talk about that at the end of the program. I got a whole tour, central and southern Illinois. We're going to get down your way this time. Now, this bill that I'm about to talk about has picked up a ton of sponsors, and it hasn't quite moved yet, but this is Illinois. So this could literally happen in like 72 hours, okay? But America, this is not just for Illinois. America, you need to be aware of House Bill 3320 actually has a companion bill kicking around in the Senate. Same thing, different chamber, Senate Bill 2279, known as the Rifle Act. The responsibility in firearm legislation. This is what it is. And America, all of you need to pay attention because this is absolutely one of the most sinister things. What it says is that, hey, if you are a manufacturer, an importer, a retailer of any type of firearm ammunition, firearm components, that you need to get a license in order to do the business in the state. But the fee for that license will be based on what the state of Illinois has determined is your proportional share of the cost of gun violence in the state of Illinois, which, as we know, has a significant violence problem, I should say. All right, now, you're sitting there, and I can go deeper into the law because it says, oh, and when we're talking about costs, we're not just talking about the cost of the kid's emergency room visit. We're talking about, all the burial costs. We're talking about family counseling. We're talking about everything. It goes on and on. And to just give you an idea, America, of how much Illinois says that they need to collect the first year, because they got to just start somewhere, right? Can't just say, well, let's take the aggregate of the last 3 years. And of course, how they calculate this cost, I don't know. But, it's government, so the cost is only going to go up, right? Because it only goes in one direction. In the first year, everyone's fees will total $866 million. So just shy of $1 billion in licensing fees. Now, if you are a large firearm manufacturer like a Glock, a Smith & Wesson, somebody like that. They're selling a lot of firearms even inside states like Illinois. Your portion of that $1 billion fee is going to be a big piece, not because of gun violence, just simply because of the volume of sales that you're producing in that state like you do in every other state. And if you're one of those companies and it's going to cost you millions and millions of dollars to do business in the state of Illinois, what are you going to do? That's right. You're just not going to, you're like, the hell with Illinois. We're not going to do business in that state. And of course, if you're the smaller companies, little ammunition manufacturers, things like that, not the big boys, the smaller ones, how are you going to do that? If you're a holster company, how are you going to do that? And so you can see how they would just decimate the FFL industry. So that is the most evil and nefarious thing going on in Illinois right now, which is saying something because it's Illinois. All right. Connecticut. We're going to move on to Connecticut because, I want you guys to understand what is happening around the country, because if it's not happening at your back door yet, it could be there in a week, in a year, in a month. You never know. All right. We're going to talk about House Bill 5043. This is a Glock ban. That's what it is. It's a Glock ban. Okay. This is how states do Glock bans, because California did it. And now everyone's just cutting and pasting. And trust me, I followed this California law from its inception, and it is a cut and paste job here in Connecticut. Convertible pistol means any semi-automatic pistol with a cruciform trigger bar. All right. Should have probably put a slide in there that would show you what a cruciform trigger bar looks like. For those of you who are Glock owners, if you break it down, you look right in there, you'll see exactly why it's called a cruciform trigger, because there's literally a little cross in there that holds it in place. So this also doesn't just mean Glocks, though. This is all Glock cones. So all your shadow systems and some of those other really, really nice firearms that are built off the Glock's frame, this would account for them as well. All right. It basically says that after a date certain, you can't sell those firearms anymore. So this is a ban on the commercial sale of Glock and all Glock clones. And I think there's at least one Smith & Wesson model, and there may even be a Ruger model out there that also has a cruciform trigger. I'm going to let the real firearm geeks, you guys want to put something down in the description box, let everyone else know, or in the comment section, I should say, let everyone else know. That would be really, really helpful to know. So that is a Glock ban. That's right now the only thing that's kicking out around in Connecticut. But then when you go over to Maryland, and maybe we're not seeing as much stuff in states like Maryland because candidly they banned everything already, right? They've taken damn near all of their Second Amendment rights. But we do have Senate Bill 334 as well as House Bill 577. And these are both Glock bans. Verbatim, they are barely different than Connecticut at all. Oftentimes it's just some of the formatting and some of the preamble stuff that you'll see that's different. But once you get into the definitional sections and it shall be unlawful when blah, 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 it's literally cut and paste on it all from the same statute. So again, got a cruciform trigger, can't be sold, date certain, doesn't ban the possession of anything like that or anything like that. It's what we probably should do is just come up with laws that ban Glock switches and the use of that's right, we already do have those laws. And this is really kind of much akin to, we got to ban Kias and things like that because they're too easy to break in and steal. So that's what's happening. That's what's going on in Maryland. From there, we move to the king of crazies, California. And what California has going on right now is a couple of bills that have people worked out pretty good. One is Senate Bill 948. A lot of people are making a really big deal out of this one. And candidly, California is a little bit late to the party. In order to get their firearm safety certificate, they're going to expand the class to an 8-hour class with live fire training. We are seeing this in a lot of other states tied into permit to purchases. This is the thing I want you to be aware of, America. Permit to purchase, permit to possess. If you want to know how it can be abused, talk to anybody that lives in Illinois and the FOID card. That's all you got to do, because they'll yank your FOID card in Illinois for some of the most horseshit reasons and then try to get it back. I mean, you can get charged with a crime that's not even a forfeitable offense. They'll yank your FOID card. You can be found not guilty. The prosecutor can dismiss it, and you're still fighting like hell to get your FOID card back. And in the meantime, you are completely disarmed. The other thing, and this is what a lot of legislators don't seem to think, is And this is something that many of you may not be aware of, but some of you might, and all of you should. Some of the people who very rapidly come to the Second Amendment community are oftentimes abused women who are getting out of amazingly dangerous situations and taking a big chance in trying to get out. And they may be going through a divorce. They may have all sorts of protection orders, no contact orders, all of that. But trust me, as a criminal defense attorney, pieces of paper do not save lives. And so they oftentimes are in a situation where they need to do something to ensure their protection, and sometimes young children's protection as well. But now they can't get a firearm until they go through all of this training. And then, of course, go to do the training, they actually have to do live fire training, but they got to have a gun to do live fire training, but they don't have one. That's why they're trying to get the permit to purchase. And you see what goes on here with all of that. Add your background checks, then add, a couple $1,000s in cost. And in that 30 to 75 days that she's jumping through every freaking hoop possible to get a firearm, bad things happen, terrible things happen. That's way too much time. So that's a component of these permit to purchase that nobody seems to want to acknowledge. A lot of female legislators around the country that are very, very big on gun control, and yet they are in one of the most vulnerable groups, candidly a group that ought to be as heavily armed as everybody. So that is California Senate Bill 948. And then we have also Assembly Bill 1753. And this is a little bit of a Colorado model of expanding red flag laws. By the way, if you get red flag, they take all your firearms and ammunition under this. But then the other thing is the petitioners. That's the people who are asking for the order to be issued. They're making it much easier for them to appear, including through virtual appearances. And I will tell you this, that the ability to cross-examine a witness at a red flag hearing is already very difficult. I don't care what state you're in. Of course, I am relying on my experience here in Washington State, but difficult to do already just because of the watered-down rules that we have. Trying to do it virtually makes it even much more difficult. So again, this is just a method by which we can streamline the process to get more and more red flags. Because at the end of the day, and this is all Washington gun law is about, is gun laws are only trying to ban one of three things, aren't they? Think about it. People, places, or things. That's all they're doing. And that's what so every one of these, if you look at every one of these bills we're talking about, what are we banning? We're banning a person, a place, or a thing. All right, we're moving on. The hometown crowd. Yeah, we weren't going to forget about you. We got the hometown crowd here. We got two bills that were really kicking around. And then today, literally as I'm kind of doing some final prep work, we got a third bill that someone must have hit with the defibrillator and it's got a heartbeat again. Okay, so Senate Bill 5098 creates all new gun-free zones. A lot of people around the country call them sensitive places. Washington State, we call them gun-free zones. It's about every possible place that children might gather. Playgrounds, little league fields, aquatic centers, beach parks, you name it, on and on and on. There is a huge exception in the bill right now, and you want to make sure that the House, now that it's over in the House, because it's already passed out of the Senate, you want to make sure it stays there. It does not ban the concealed carrying of firearms in any of these locations. It does ban the open carrying. And like I say, it passed out of the Senate last year and never got really through the House, but it was a carryover bill. So they passed it out of the Senate again almost instantly. It's over at the House. It's going through committee. It's going to get to the governor's desk. And then, of course, this is a governor who absolutely adores gun control legislation, so it will be signed. 2320 is another ban on 3D printing of certain items and the possession of files, Washington. And we've done separate videos, so I don't need to get too deep into it. Check out the library playlist is Washington Legislative Update right in there. But this, again, the first part of the bill, you can't 3D print an unfinished frame. You can't 3D print an unfinished receiver, a bump stock, things that I would have told you can't manufacture anyways due to pre-existing law. And I've always viewed 3D printing as just another method of manufacturing. So I don't think it did much. But again, it has this possession ban on computer files. And Again, it also has the possession shall be an inference or a presumption that you're up to no good with them, and you can disprove it. So we may have unconstitutional burden shiftings in that if anyone is ever prosecuted under this. And to give you an idea, Washington, of when I say if anyone's ever prosecuted, as Washington gun law, I can assure you that if someone had ever been charged as a criminal in a district or superior court with possession of an unlawful assault weapon or possession of large capacity magazines, I would have got a call on it at least. Okay. I have never, ever once got a call on that anywhere in Washington state at all. Had some FFLs do some things, but those things are public knowledge. Everyone knows about those. Okay. So those are the two bills that I thought I was going to be talking to you about. Now along comes House Bill 1152. And I hate this bill, and I hate this bill for lots of reasons. It's new safe storage laws. And the reason I hate this bill is I actually think that if a state has to have a safe storage law, Washington's current version, 941-360, is a pretty good piece of legislation. House Bill 1152 will probably be one of the most non-complied with laws ever, because it would require when a firearm is left unattended in a vehicle, which normally, as long as the car is locked and no one can see the firearm from outside the vehicle, that's sufficient. Now it requires it to go in an entirely separate lock case. But the worst part of the bill is that when you're at home, unless the firearm's on your person, you got to render it in a position which is essentially inoperable. My beef with that is that I think safe storage should be based upon individual living environments. For example, when Gun Law Junior and Gun Law Junior were much younger, there was no firearm or firearm component ever left lying around the house, anywhere, anytime, any place. Otherwise, Mrs. Gun Law would have killed me. Okay, that was the rules. I had young boys running around the house. Now, if I'm at my other place and it's just me and the dog, yeah, it's probably laying right there in the middle of the kitchen counter, probably laying right there on the nightstand. Why? It's just me and the dog. So safe storage should be based. I think the family of 4 kids should store firearms much differently than the single person who lives on the 24th floor of a condo and never has anybody over. So unfortunately, 1152 screws all of that up. And I just candidly don't think anyone's going to comply with it, and it will save no lives. All right. Those are all of the bills that actually are picking up steam. And we're doing good on time. I wanted to do this in an hour or just under, so we're going to do really good. For all of you who've been tuning in and staying with us all night, thank you very much. I really appreciate you geeking out with us here. I am going to bring you to absolutely the dumbest gun bill kicking around anywhere in the United States right now. And of course, it comes from our friends in Hawaii. Where else could you come up with something so immensely stupid as what you're about to read, which is Senate Bill 3039. This is a bill that says that if you are so lucky as to get a concealed carry license and you choose to carry a firearm because you value your life, it will be unlawful for you to carry that firearm unless, and at the same time, you carry a stun gun, a taser, or something like that. Don't believe me? This is actually the language of the law. A person with a license issued under Section 134-9 shall not carry a firearm on the licensee's person within the state without also carrying an electric gun on the licensee's person. And the penalties are not only criminal, but if you're found in violation of this law, you would actually lose your concealed carry privileges. Now, think about this. What the state of Hawaii is proposing is a piece of legislation that would disarm you because at one point you were not armed enough. The logic, the aloha spirit lives. Okay, that is everything we wanted to talk about. Now, that's all the bad news. And do I have any good news? Yeah, the good news is I didn't have to talk about a bunch of other states. And okay, and again, if you're piping in down in the description in the comment section below and saying, oh, you got to see these horseshit gun laws they're talking about in Tennessee or these crazy gun laws they're talking about in Florida. Yeah, you got some nut job legislator who's virtue signaling. Those things don't have a snowball's chance in hell of passing. I know the numbers that you got in your Senate. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we're not going to freak out. But if you live in a really, really red state and you want to know what the depths of hell will look like, you could either ask folks in Virginia or you could take a look at the gun bills that do get proposed, even though they don't have any chance in hell of passing. All right, but the most important thing is what can you guys do? What can you guys do, right? Well, you got to get some skin in the game. That's the bottom line. Now, these are the national organizations, but if you guys are watching live or you're watching on replay, down in this description box below, I have put a whole bunch of local organizations as well. These are organizations that I've had an opportunity to cover on the channel. I've had an opportunity to have interactions with them. And I know that they're good people who see the world the way we do. And they're out there actually fighting like hell, trying to preserve your constitutional rights. Is it an exhaustive list? Of course, it's not an exhaustive list. I probably left a couple off. You guys probably know some really fantastic organizations on a local level, state-specific groups. And if you do, put a plug for them down there in the comment section, okay? And if you're living in a state and you're looking like, where can I donate? Where can I volunteer some time? What can I do? These are the groups to be taken a look at. And this is what I need you to understand, especially if you're in one of these states like Virginia, New Mexico, Colorado, where it seems like the whole world's about to just crumble on you, okay? Because I went through this in Washington also, all right? And everyone's always going to ask, why don't you just get out of there? Why don't you just get out of there? Well, if it were that easy, we would, right? But there's lots of reasons why we can't, or we can't right now. If you're going to stay behind enemy lines, then make yourself and make all of us a promise. And that's that you're going to live there, and you're going to live in a manner where you would rather die on your feet than live on your knees. And that's what I need you to do is if you're going to stay behind enemy lines, buckle up, dig your heels in, pick a fight, and go bloody some noses. I mean, we have got to fight. Get active with your legislature, get active at the local level, get active educating. That is a huge, powerful tool for us in the Second Amendment community. I think it is the most powerful tool, which is something that we embrace at Washington Gun Law. It's education. Why? Because the facts are on our side, the law is on our side, the Constitution is on our side, and candidly, common sense is on our side as well. Final announcements. Illinois. For all of you who are watching now or will be watching from Illinois, yes, we get to do another road trip. These are the dates. Yes, we start up near Chicago. Going to be up at Gat Guns for factory shoot. But you can see right after that, we're going to Streeter, Bartonville, Bloomington, Quincy, East Alton. I'm actually flying home from St. Louis. So I'd heard you loud and clear, Illinois, that we never got down to the central and southern part of the state. I agree completely. That's where the tour is going this time. So I am looking forward to seeing all of you. Our next live thing, once again, is going to be on, unless something else comes up in the meantime, who knows, but it's going to be bright and early on the morning of February 23rd, going over the orders list from the February 20th conference. And of course, if we get lucky, I'm going to talk our good friend Kostas Moros into joining us. Wouldn't that be cool if we actually had Kostas on doing a live thing on the Supreme Court orders list on the day when like Duncan or something like that got accepted? That would be really, really freaking awesome. Okay, listen, I appreciate everyone who tuned in live. Thank you very much for hanging out with us all night. For those of you watching on replay, again, check out all the things. Everything's linked up in the description box. We'll see you soon. Thanks again, everyone. Most importantly, you guys stay safe out there.